Hi, I'm Sophie. It's really been a pleasure being in this class with all of you. The paper that I'm working on is about NPR. I grew up listening to NPR. It was always on in my parents' cars. Um, and I've always enjoyed the programming, like All Things Considered and Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. Also, Car Talk was a favorite. So what I wanted to examine was the roots and origins of public radio and how it was sort of laid out and became the institution that it is. Um, and then see if the original intent of public radio matches up with the way it manifests itself today. So essentially, I started looking into the origins of NPR and public radio in general, and it's pretty closely tied to television as well. But what I'm finding is that the original intent is full of very lofty goals about engaging citizenry and creating a broad democracy and encouraging citizens to participate in their local communities. And it sounds so wonderful and so idealistic and so helpful, especially at a time when people are disconnected and there's so much partisanship. Um, but when you look at the reality of the listeners of NPR, it's a very small demographic. It's white, wealthy, mostly male, um, and it doesn't appear that NPR is able to reach out to the broad community that it originally intended in order to create those bridges and be a real community resource. Um, so now knowing that, what my paper goes into is why that's happening. And obviously the main issue at play is funding. And I'm sort of realizing as I read the various pieces of legislation, such as the Public Broadcasting Act, and other pieces of legislation, that the federal funding available for public radio is quite minimal. So public radio's original intent to be free from advertisers and not have to pay attention to what listeners care about because they can just broadcast what they want since they have enough money, is in fact not the reality. And it's a bit of a myth that public radio is able to be the institution that it intended to be, primarily because of this. So what we're seeing now is a lot of focus from NPR on audience research and checking out what's their demographic. It's primarily older men. How can we make sure to appeal to the 25 to 35 group and get them hooked in as listeners so that they become the adults that also listen to NPR. So it sort of spiraled from being a very independent, locally based, grassroots organization that would just publish and promote the content that they thought was important for the community to very much a research and data-driven organization. And it seems pretty far from its original intent and original ideals. I'll conclude my paper with a little bit of an examination of what the future for radio is. And I think, as we've discussed in many of our discussion boards about podcasts and other items like that, the future of radio does not appear as bleak as perhaps it once did. We may not be using the actual radio technology. We'll move to internet-based platforms, but the content is very much appreciated and engaged with. So I'm excited to research that final point of what is the future of radio and public radio specifically.